Haidete o Philoi. I'm Fletcher from amindforlanguage.com, and you're listening to Greeking Out, a podcast for ancient and Koine Greek learners full of tools, tips, and possibly tirades on learning Greek using comprehension-based methods. If that isn't familiar to you, check out episode 0, the manifesto, for more info. Today I want to talk about the Iverson method. It's a method for learning vocabulary that's based on word lists and copying and quizzing. It's pretty simple. It's easy to do, relatively portable, based on an idea by a gentleman named Niels Iverson. Anyway, the point being, it's simple. You write down the list of the target vocabulary you want to learn in sets of 5 to 7 words. Then you write down you try to remember the meaning, and you write down the meaning for the words, and then you then cover up the original, and then in your third column you try to go from the translation back to the word itself, and then the next day you would then cover up all but the word itself, and then write the translation, and then cover that, and then try to write the word itself again. And after that, you're pretty much done. So it's not a long-term retention strategy like, say, Anki or other spaced repetition tools where you're going to be dealing with the words over and over again. But I think it's got a couple advantages potentially over Anki, especially as we're thinking in terms of comprehensible input-based methods. So here we go. I think the primary advantage is, 1, it's really simple, and 2, it's a useful pre-learning, or maybe priming, I think is a term that I've seen used. Say we get a list of vocabulary, like say you're working through Athanase or some textbook where you have a vocabulary list before reading. You could go through that list and look at the words that you think you might have a little trouble remembering, and use this method to help give you just a little bit more of an edge in remembering the meaning of those words. And then you go to the reading, and then you read through it. So then your primary method is still reading based, or listening based, comprehensible input based language acquisition. However, we're sort of boosting it and making that easier by doing some preloading of vocabulary. And in this situation, we don't actually need to remember it for the long term. We don't need Anki to keep bringing it back up, because we're just trying to get it in our mind to stick long enough that the encounters we have in the text we're reading, or the textbook, or conversation, or whatever, in our input causes it to stick. So that's where I think this method has some value. And I saw that myself actually today as I was using it in working on Hebrew. I got a list of vocabulary for a certain frequency for the chapter I wanted to read, and use this method to kind of pre-learn it, and it was much easier reading. You're reading the chapter. The other thing that's interesting about this method is his 5 to 7 vocabulary items. And I remember seeing a post by, I think it's Chris Fresh, over on, I think it's Koine-Greek.com. I always forget which website it is, but the one with Mike Aubrey and those guys. And he was talking about some of the research that says we really actually learn, basically, it's best to try and study in groups of 5 to 7 vocabulary items. That's really about what we're going to be able to do in a single day. So I thought it was really interesting that this method says to work in blocks of that size. And the other thing Iverson's method says too is work in those blocks. So do 5 to 7 items, and then do the glosses, and work across the column. And then if you want to add more, then do another chunk of 5 to 7. But we're sticking with that number. So I feel like there's some, whether he knew about the research or not, the method's got some advantages there. So anyway, that's the Iverson method. And like I said, why I think it's useful is it's simple. It's great as a priming tool. I'm not sure it would work well for any kind of long-term acquisition, but it's great for priming for reading or listening, or conversation, or whatever, where you can expect to find those words again. And again, it's got some base in what the research says. It's working in chunks of manageable chunks of vocabulary that fit with what our brain can usually handle. So I think for those reasons, it's another tool that's worth having in our toolbox. So yeah, give it a shot. Mention in the comments, or whatever, what you think, and let me know what you think of it. Intro and outro music is Funky Thanksgiving by Admiral Bob. Used with gratitude under a Creative Commons 3.0 attribution license. The track can be found at dig.ccmixer.org.